Well, to be honest with you, man, I've never seen the take on that, so I really don't. I really didn't know anything about that until you just said it to me, and you know, it is what it is. It's probably a compliment to me that he would, you know, even think to, you know, reminisce a dance like mine and call it his own. So I really didn't know that happened, but it's probably a testament to me that he's seen something that I was doing that he liked and wanted to make his own little dance on it. So
absolutely. You know what, Icky, we're going to give him a round of applause. A round of applause just for trying to rip off the Icky Shuffle, just because we can. And failing miserably at it, by the way. They may have stole a Super Bowl from you. Listen, they stole a Super Bowl from you, but they can't steal the shuffle.
Yeah, his was pretty bad.
Right. Yeah, they got lucky one, man. We can't believe we went to that old prevent defense. It prevented us from winning the game. You know, you have pressure on the guy for 57 minutes, and you got 3 minutes left in the game, and you bag off the guy and let him sit back there and just pick you apart all the way down the field. So unfortunate that happened, but you know that's the nature of that beast. You got to take the good with the bad. So
right, we're going to give them an astounding round of boos because they were dinking and dunking their way down the field instead of, come on, man, throw the ball downfield. Don't just give me this 5-yard crap, 7-yard crap. Give me something with a little bit of distance. Icky, you know what I want to see here in our last couple minutes? I would love to see quarterback stats now. Not how many yards he actually passed, but I want to know how many yards were actually airborne, right? Not this 2 or 3 yard garbage where his yak is going to be 50 beyond that. No, that's a 2-yard pass, not a 52-yard pass.
Right. It happens. You know, that's why they pay those scat backs and those slot receivers the big money to catch the ball and make a play. You know, get the ball upfield, and the guys did a good job of doing that, and we just we just too little, too late, man. We had an opportunity. We had an interception that was dropped in the end zone that probably could have won us the game. And, you know, we had a couple of situations before the game that happened that hurt us with the Stanley Wilson incident, and then Tim Crumright going out in the second play of the game didn't help at all either. So, you know, we had some unfortunate things, but we were still in the game, and, you know, it's a game we should have won. We should have ran the ball more because we average running the ball, you know, 40 to 45 times a game. We get to the Super Bowl and we only run the ball 32 times a game. So that game. So it's you know, I don't know if we were trying to turn ourselves into a passing team when we were actually a run team. So you know, that's hindsight is 2020. So we can't look back on that. You know, it was a great game,
60,
great ball game. Niners came out on top though.
Yeah. Well, guess what, folks? This is the Icky Shuffle originator. That's Icky Woods. Make sure you check out the Javante Woods Foundation. And, folks, we're going to put a link on the sportscircus.com's partners page. We'll have that done within the next couple days. This way you can help out the cause for asthma. Icky, very, very nice having you on the show. We're going to have you back in the studio, actually, when you come out here in Vegas, if you're up for it, back in September. Or up in September. What do you think?
Sounds good, brother. I appreciate that. That way I can talk about my son's foundation a little bit more and get more in depth to the things that we're trying to do to fight this deadly disease called asthma.
All right. That's Icky Woods. And a big welcome to everybody tuning in late because you just missed a great interview. And we're out of here on the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster, Sal, for Icky Woods and Darian. We'll see you next time right here on your favorite station. Until then, so long, everyone.
Attention business owners, you and your customers are listening to this commercial right now. Face it, every business needs customers, even yours. The Sports Circus is a primetime nationally syndicated program that's carried on ABC, NBC, CNBC, and Westwood One News affiliates, plus CBS, Fox, and NBC sports affiliates across North America with coverage from Hawaii to New York. Also, the Sports Circus is available to the 180 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, and the Sports Circus gets about 4 million website visitors per month, which could click through your website and bring sales. The Sports Circus provides great content featuring celebrity guests from sports and entertainment to our audience every weekday, which your company could greatly benefit from by increasing your visibility, foot traffic, eyeballs to your website, and calls from potential customers. Call us right now at 702-799-9935. Again, 702-799-9935, or email us at info@thesportscircus.com. That's info@thesportscircus.com. Drive your sales today by advertising with the Sports Circus.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
It's time for Age of Being 2020 with Barbara Matthews, a show about successful aging, helpful services, and simplifying the complicated with practical solutions. And now, here's your host, Barbara Matthews.
Welcome to Age of Being 2020, a program dedicated to solving the challenges of senior care and aging. I'm Barbara Matthews, your host and author of the book Old Age, The Paradox of Physical Decline and Spiritual Greatness. Each week we'll introduce a helpful service, explain practical options, and simplify the complicated, all to help you and your family find good care, affordable care, and put your children's minds at peace knowing you are okay. Today, we're going to talk about a common problem. Across the United States, there are 31,000 residential care facilities caring for 1 million seniors. In California, there are 7,500 residential care facilities and 175,000 beds. I'll say that again. There are 175,000 available beds and 7,500 residential care facilities. If you can no longer stay in your own home, how on earth do you possibly decide which one is right for you and your family? How do you choose the right one? Well, fortunately, you don't need to visit all of them to get the information you need to make the best decision. There's some help available, and she's here today. It's senior care referral expert Catherine Shepard, here to show you how to save time and money finding the right senior care home. But first of all, what is senior care referral service? I mean, you might have heard it called an assisted living referral service, or an assisted living locator, or a placement agency, or a senior housing advisor. All of these terms really refer to the same organization that helps families decide which senior care resident is best for their loved one. And families really do need help to do this, because choosing a residence can be really difficult when you are unfamiliar with the senior care industry, you're unfamiliar with the different levels of care. And what if you are an adult child living in another state looking for a new home for mom here in Southern California? Well, let me introduce Catherine to you to get started. Catherine Shepard is owner and president of Senior Care Referral Specialist Incorporated, which provides referral services at no charge. Catherine and her team have over 30 years of combined knowledge and experience in senior care, and for the past 9 years, they have helped thousands of families in the Inland Empire and beyond. Catherine's team also serves as a resource for the many senior care and industry professionals who refer to them frequently. And I'm going to ask her about that service as well. But first, welcome, Catherine. Are you there?
I am. How are you doing tonight?
I am good. Catherine, I want to get started right away and ask you, how did you become interested in senior care?
You know, Barbara, I have kind of a unique story. I grew up in a home, and maybe it's not so unique to many of your listeners. I grew up in a home with my grandmother who had MS, And she lived with my family until she needed a level of care that couldn't be provided at home. And at some point, she needed to move to a care setting when she was very elderly that provided 24-hour care for her. So as I grew up in that setting, we were encouraged to do volunteer work, and my first volunteer position in junior high school was in a nursing home. And I continued developing a love for the elderly from there. As an adult, I worked in personnel administration and training and development in various fields, but eventually a door opened for me to a career in healthcare in 2005, working with families through a national company to help them find appropriate care. And during my time with that company, I stepped into management and was responsible for the training and oversight of many elder care consultants in several states, and then eventually left to start my own company.
You know, one of the things I've noticed in this industry is certainly people in it are people of heart. And there's quite often a grandparent, an older adult in their lives when they were a child who really impressed upon them that specialness, that wisdom, that incredible giving and love which older adults often have. Why did you start your own company?
Well, you know, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I think that's the kind of people that you find in this industry so often, and I hate to call it an industry because it's really a passion for so many people in the senior care field. I felt that on a large-scale basis, like that of the national company I was with for so long, the personal focus was beginning to be missing in many cases. Large corporations tend to be driven by statistics, and I felt that eventually too much emphasis was being placed on conversion numbers rather than focusing really tightly on meeting the exact needs of a family and their elderly loved one. And for me, one of the things I found is that I really enjoyed the process of working closely with a family, but I didn't like the idea of clicking a bunch of buttons and just shooting out a list of places. So eventually I left. I began a sort of boutique agency that would spend the time needed with each family to do the required research to direct them carefully, because their energy at that time is so emotionally fraught with so many levels of, emotion. We didn't want it wasted at such a critical time in their loved one's journey. And we know people are worn out mentally and physically when they care for somebody over a prolonged period. And it's a stressful situation, not only for them, but for their loved one. And we just wanted to make the actual transition to a new home as easy as possible for everybody involved.
You bring up an excellent point. Yes, caregivers are exhausted.
They are.
And they don't really have time to visit lots of possible new homes for their loved one. So, to that point, explain a little more about what your referral service does and how it can save time and resources.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, there are thousands of care settings available to people. And a referral service should ideally help narrow down all those possibilities in an area to the top options for a family to consider based on 4 primary criteria. And those criteria are clinical care needs, socialization needs, budgetary criteria, of course, and location.
Let me interrupt you for a minute. Explain just in a word or two what you mean by clinical needs, socialization needs, budgetary criteria.
Sure. So clinical care needs are the physical needs that are and emotional, physical and mental needs that somebody's facing. It could be a need for bathing and dressing, for transitioning in and out of bed or to a chair. Mobility issues, hygiene issues. All of those are clinical. Socialization would be, the need for people to not be isolated any longer and to have appropriate socialization with their peers. Budgetary criteria, people come in at all different levels of budget, and we help guide them to places that they can find care at a budget that fits their needs for a long term. Our goal is definitely not to just find them something that they can go into short term and pay a high amount of money, and then 5 years from now or 3 years from now, they're out of money and don't know what to do. Our goal is to help them find something long-term.
Okay, good point.
And then location, of course, families typically have an idea of where they like their loved one, whether the senior would like to stay close to the community they're in right now because they maybe have ties, to friends who would visit with them, or maybe they want to move closer to their family, or the family needs them to move closer in order to be involved with them on a more regular basis.
Okay, so you're saying these are the 4 primary criteria which families make decisions on.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Keep going.
Sure. So when a family does what we call a drive-by, or when they call around, the first thing that typically happens is normally a visit or a tour of the community. And it's really only during the tour that a family might discover that it's either a good fit or it's not a good fit based on any of the criteria I just mentioned. And certainly some families would find a right fit this way, but often we know that families go in and out of locations desperately seeking the right fit, or they spend just hours and hours making dozens of calls, repeating their story over and over before they find a place that might be a good fit. So our job as a referral agency is to do all that legwork for them up front so the families can focus on making an educated decision and exploring the options from the start that are the best options. We've been referred to in some cases as senior care matchmakers, if that if that gives you kind of a visual.
I like that. Matchmakers. Catherine, in your introduction, it was noted that your agency serves as a resource for many senior care industry and professionals. Is that a part of the process?
Oh, it absolutely is. We work with a vast array of professionals in the industry, everyone from Medicare brokers to VA specialists who can offer information on VA benefits, to elder law attorneys and physicians and social workers, and just everybody that would touch a senior's life. We're connected to them in one way or another, and we often share that information.
Okay. So are they part of this matchmaking process that you're talking about?
Well, our focus particularly is on helping families find a suitable care setting or an in-home care situation. But certainly during our process of discovery with the family and discussing what the needs are, if we hear things come up in that discussion where we know there's a professional that could potentially be of assistance to them, we will absolutely make those referrals.
Oh, I like that. Well, tell me about the process of working with a family. What happens first? How do you get started?
Sure. Well, we have a team of 3 consultants in addition to myself, and then, of course, we have a full-time community liaison who meets with our partners and senior industry professionals that we work with. And we, as a company, work with over 1,300 care settings and home care agencies throughout Southern California. Primarily, we cover Orange County, San Bernardino County, Riverside and San Diego counties, and out to the desert as well. And we do a little work in Los Angeles. We work very closely with a lot of care professionals, as I mentioned, such as physicians and social workers and other senior-focused professionals who are constantly in touch with seniors. So they often direct their patients and clients to us. Our services, and it's important to note this, our services are free to families because we're reimbursed by the care communities and agencies for the work that we do when a family selects the services through us. So when we connect with a family, we generally speak with them for about 20 to 40 minutes, and during that time, what we're doing is really learning a lot of specific information that will help us when we do our research for them. So the questions we ask are very thorough. We know exactly what's going on with the person in need. There's a lot of different directions those questions can take depending on each answer. And so that helps us narrow down the different options. So, for example, we might have somebody who is calling about their mom who's awake at night constantly. Mm-hmm. So we need to make sure that we look at a care setting that has staff that is awake all night or is scheduled to check on them regularly. Mm. Not every home has that, or care setting. Some of them have staff that sleep at night and get up to check on residents. So if somebody's a wanderer risk, we want to make sure that there's staff that's up at night with them.
Okay.
Somebody may be on oxygen or require insulin injections, but some care settings don't provide that type of oversight. So these are just a few of dozens of different care needs that would dictate where we would look for them in our research. And it's interesting because most families, when they're calling around, they don't even know to ask specifically, do you take insulin injections, or my mom is a wanderer, or he's on oxygen, or whatever it might be. That may only come out during the tour. So utilizing our services, we're able to get to that initially right away.
You're making them extremely aware of more questions they need to ask and understanding the nuance to make sure they get the right level of care for your mom.
Exactly. I mean, we discuss each option with them so that they can understand what options are available to them based on the criteria again. We discuss finances. As we told you, we don't want to spend all their money up front and have nothing left for future years. And it's critically important that, that families are sent to the right places to look at that fit their budget long term, not just for the immediate future. There's a lot of county and state regulations that might impact their ultimate decision.
Like what? What do you mean by?
Well, yeah, they may not realize that certain care needs will only be suitable for a nursing home rather than an assisted living community.
Catherine, let me put you on pause for a moment. We've
Sure.
got to go to break. I want to come back to that, though. And when we come back, I'm going to ask Catherine that question.
Sure.
You've been listening to The Age of Being 2020 with Barbara Matthews. We'll return right after this.
Stardate, April 29th. If you drew a bubble around the Sun 10 light-years wide, it would contain only 3 other stars, the triple system known as Alpha Centauri. If you drew the same sized bubble around a star near the center of Messier 3, though, it would contain many thousands of stars. The night sky of an Earth-like planet there would be ablaze with stars, enough to keep the night from getting truly dark. And some stars would be visible even in the daytime. Messier 3 is a globular cluster, a ball-shaped collection of perhaps 500,000 stars that's only a few hundred light-years across. The cluster probably formed when the Milky Way was quite young, so its stars are all old, and most of them are feeble. They're so tightly packed, though, that the view from inside the cluster would be spectacular. And if you could see through all those stars, the view beyond the cluster would be even better. That's because M3 is about 30,000 light-years above the plane of the galaxy's disk. So any residents of the cluster would get a view of the Milky Way that looked like something out of a textbook, the grand expanse of our beautiful spiral galaxy. M3 is a pretty nice sight on its own. It's high in the east at nightfall. It's to the upper left of the bright star Arcturus, by a little more than the width of your fist held at arm's length. Binoculars reveal the cluster's glow, while a small telescope shows some of its individual stars. You can find much more about star clusters in Stardate magazine. Subscription information at stardate.org. For the University of Texas at Austin McDonald Observatory, I'm Sandy Wood.
And now, more of The Age of Being 2020 with Barbara Matthews.
Welcome back to Age of Being 2020, the program dedicated to solving the challenges of senior care and aging. I'm Barbara Matthews, and today we're talking with Catherine Shepard about senior care referral agencies. Catherine was telling us the criteria that are important for families to think about when they're looking for an assisted living community. And Catherine had just mentioned she wants to make sure that she helps families find a community that's going to be affordable in the immediate present as well as a year or two out. Catherine, did you say all there was to say about that? And because how do you know what a facility is or a community is going to cost 2 or 3 years in the future? Is there some kind of standard inflation raise the rent rate?
There is typically, and again, it depends on the type of community, and we can go into that in a few minutes, but typically in a large community, you'll see an increase of 2 to 5% annually for the room, and then level of care will have changes based on, what's happening with the person at that time. and smaller care homes will go into that as well. They typically stay pretty static except for a massive change in care. But when we talk with a family, we look at the whole financial picture, so it's very helpful if a family is upfront with us so that we can kind of do some calculations and project out for, a reasonable period of 5 to 10 years of care, so that we can give them kind of a good indication of what they need to be spending on their budget if they're not quite sure. And I think we were also discussing briefly some of the county regulations. Did you want me to?
I do. I want to ask you
that?
what
Okay.
you mean by that, the county and the state regulations
Sure,
that might impact the decision.
Absolutely. There's some regulations that many people don't know, and so it impacts their decisions. So, for example, if somebody has a diagnosis of dementia, they can't go into a community that is licensed only for assisted living. They would have to go into a community that is licensed for memory care. And so, again, because we know which communities are licensed in which regard, we can send them to the right places to start with. Another option might be somebody who has maybe a feeding tube. That is considered an invasive procedure, and so care settings that are not nursing homes are not licensed to take those in most cases. Those are just two examples.
Okay, good point. Well, what happens after this initial phone call with the family and beginning to give them some guidance?
Sure. After we speak, the consultants that's working with them will begin to spend their time narrowing down the myriad of potential options to the ones that might be a good fit for them based on the care needs and the social needs and the budget and location, as we mentioned. And then we don't just put that list together and send it to the family. We actually take the time to contact each of those settings and discuss the situation to be sure the care location also feels it would be a good fit for them as well. And through this process, we're able to create a short list of the top 4 to 5 locations for initial consideration. And then, with the family's permission, we'll schedule visits accordingly and provide all the contact information along with a schedule to the family and a list of questions. So they never need to do any further work on their own after speaking with us initially until they go out to tour the locations we've identified on the short list. It's really a time saver. It brings a lot of relief to families that they don't have to call dozens of locations and repeat their story over and over. And with the questions that they have as they tour and the things to look for, that they're well prepared. And then we kind of debrief with them afterwards. We review their visits and discuss any questions or concerns they might have.
Okay, so this is part of the matchmaking service when you're reaching out to the communities before the family visits.
Right.
Are you asking them? You're telling them about the patient and confirming they could take this level of care?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We don't want the family to set foot in a location that is not prepared to handle the level of care that's been described to us in detail.
So before the family visits the community, they can feel comfortable that the community is aware of them, their specific needs, their budget, and in a matchmaking perspective, one side's on board with trying to make this relationship work, and that it's the family going to visit and decide if it's right for them. Is that pretty much the way
You've got it perfectly. Exactly. That's
works?
exactly how it works. And if for any
Okay.
reason it doesn't fit in the first 4 to 5, then we go on to a secondary list. But I can comfortably say that probably 95% of the time or more, people tend to find what they're looking for in the first group that we give them because we're very qualified and good at this.
Well, I think that's a testament to your thoroughness and your understanding of the particular need.
Right.
So,
Right.
Okay. What should a family look for when they visit a senior community?
So what should they look for? Well, there's a lot of different things in the different communities, but there are commonalities. They should always look for cleanliness, staff that's engaging with the residents and the guests. They should always ask to see the last 2 years' licensing reviews. We only work with licensed care communities.
Talk about that for a minute. Where do licensing reviews come from, and how how readily forthcoming will the community be to share that information with the family?
Well, if they're not readily forthcoming, that's something to question.
Okay.
And the state and county have licensing divisions, and they keep records of all the infractions and deficiency reportings and so forth. There's very, very seldom that you'll find a community that has a perfect record. I mean, none of us have perfect records on anything, in life. So what you're looking for are things that are really a concern for you and how they address them, how they fix them. So what you want to do is look for residents that seem happy and content. Ask to see the licensing reviews, as I mentioned. They should have them readily available for you.
Okay.
At a large community, you can feel completely comfortable asking to have lunch there. If you're considering a small care setting, you might even go so far to see the food in the refrigerator or freezer so you can see if it's all fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Ask about activities. Try to get a sense of involvement. Do they have a website with pictures online of activities? Do they, ask about the participation of their residents? In some small settings, you'll find a lot of people with a very high care level, and they're more content to sit and read the paper or, rest, engage in small talk. The larger communities have a much bigger overhead and budget, and they'll do a lot more activities. Also, you want to find out what the visiting hours are and how interactive the care setting is with the families as well.
A lot of details to evaluate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What if, I think you've answered this. I was going to ask you, what if a family doesn't like any of the communities, but I think you told me that you will explore with them why they didn't like them and will be able to refer them to some other places. How do people find you and your services, Catherine?
Well, they can reach us either online or by phone. I'll give you some contact information for us.
Do you have that phone number?
Yes, our phone number is 951-824-8299.
I'm going to say that again. It's area code 951-824-8299.
Mm-hmm.
And you help families in the Inland Empire area out to the desert area, as well as some of the other adjoining counties, you said.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay,
everywhere except central Los Angeles we work.
Okay. And what about a website?
Our website is www.sr, which is short for senior, so srcareinfo.com.
Okay, I'm going to repeat that, www.srcareinfo.com.
That's correct.
All right. Is your phone answered 24 hours a day?
It is. We have an answering service 24 hours a day, and our offices are standardly open Monday to Friday from 9 to 5, but on weekends we will take calls through our answering service, and if it's urgent, we will reply on the weekends as well. They just need to indicate that.
Catherine, I had other questions for you about paying for these senior communities by families, but we are out of time. I want to thank you so much for being here. You are the owner, Catherine Shepard, of Senior Care Referral Specialists. You've been wonderfully enlightening.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it, Barbara.
Thank you for helping us understand how to save time and money.
You are more than welcome.
And thank you for listening to Age of Being 2020. For more great resources on senior living, go to Amazon.com and check out my book, Old Age, The Paradox of Physical Decline and Spiritual Greatness. And join me on KCAA Radio on the NBC News Radio Network next week for Age of Being 2020, helping you live your best life.
You've been listening to The Age of Being 2020 with Barbara Matthews on KCAA. Join us each week as we explore successful aging, helpful services, and simplifying the complicated with practical solutions each week at this time right here on NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292 FQ Riverside, and K293 CF Moreno Valley.
This is InfoTrack, the weekly show with information you should know. Here's what's happening on this week's show.
Ever wonder what happens to the stuff you toss in the recycling bin? For decades, America's recyclable waste has been processed in China. But now, the Asian giant refuses to accept most U.S. recyclables.
That sent the recycling industry in the U.S. into free fall. It's no exaggeration to say that this decision by China meant the end of recycling as we know it.
Then, recent research shows that kids who participate in team sports may have greater brain development and lower rates of depression.
If it turns out that sports really is preventative of depression, we certainly might want to think about how we make sure that all kids have equal opportunities to participate.
Those two stories and more are coming your way on this week's show. InfoTrack begins right after this.
Lowe's knows you're the powerhouse who does it right to show your yard who's boss. We do it right too with innovative Craftsman string trimmers featuring easy start technology for simpler pull starts. And because you can swap out one attachment for another, you can get more done with just one tool. Shop now and add a new trimmer to your arsenal with a Craftsman 2-cycle gas string trimmer for just $129. When it's time to take on the yard work, do it right for less. Start with Lowe's. Offer valid through 4/24. See store for details. U.S. only.
Geico presents yet another voicemail from your roommate.
Hi! So, about the kitchen. Turns out when there's a grease fire, you're not supposed to throw water on it. Who would have known, right? Anyways, the fire department is here and it's totally cool. Give me a call back when you get a chance.
The Geico Insurance Agency could help keep your personal property protected, like if danger is your roommate's middle name. Visit geico.com to see how easy it is to switch and save on renter's insurance.
This morning's been great so far, until you spot a ticket on your car. It says no parking from 8 till 5, or on any days that end in a Y. You can only park here every other Lunar New Year. Oddly specific. When your morning is hell, just go to Taco Bell.
And try the $1 grilled breakfast burrito with fluffy eggs and your choice of bacon, sausage, or potato. Only at Taco Bell. At participating stores for limited time during breakfast hours. Prices may vary. Tax extra.
Spilled your red wine? Quick, the Quicker Picker-Upper. Bounty picks up spills and messes quicker. And is 2 times more absorbent than the leading Ordinary brand. So you can get back on track quicker. Bounty, the Quicker Picker-Upper.
InfoTrack, the weekly show with information you should know. Here's your host, Chris Whitting.
If you're like most Americans, you separate recyclables for disposal. But are those items actually recycled or dumped in landfills? The answer may surprise you. Here with the story, InfoTrack's Roy Mackey. Roy?
Thanks, Chris. Our guest is Kate O'Neill, an associate professor in the Department of Environmental Science, Policy, and Management at the University of California, Berkeley, and she's here to discuss the surprising state of recycling in America and what consumers need to know. So, Professor O'Neill, many consumers may not be aware of the changes in the recycling world, particularly as they relate to China. So, tell us what's going on.
Well, not many people know that until a year ago, most of our recyclables actually went to China. About 50% of what we threw into our recycling containers was baled up, put on container ships, and shipped off to China, where it was destined to be reused in China's booming manufacturing sector. In July of 2017, China announced suddenly that it would no longer be taking this plastic or paper scrap, and that sent the recycling industry in the US and other countries into free fall. It's no exaggeration to say that, as many did, this decision by China meant the end of recycling as we know it. And this decision, made at the highest political levels in Beijing, has had ramifications for what we as U.S. consumers and residents put out on our street corners or on our curbsides every week.
So what was their reason for not wanting our recycling anymore? Was it because they're creating so much of their own waste, or was what we send to them deficient in some way?
Yeah, it's a combination of things. For one, the things that we started sending them were increasingly contaminated. And by contaminated, I mean both we started sending dirty recyclables. That's as basic as a pizza box that has been contaminated with sauce and cheese, or bales of plastics that were just too mixed. Plastics come in different types, and only some are easily recyclable. Those are the 1s and 2s that we see on the base of bottles and containers. The rest are very hard to recycle. But what would happen is that a lot of authorities and sorting facilities would actually bundle all of these plastics up together and ship them off to China. So we had gotten increasingly careless on this front, and China and authorities in China were finding it harder and harder to recycle those plastics and paper, and were increasingly starting to reject them at the border. So that was one issue. Another issue that, yes, China is indeed producing an awful lot more plastic scrap in particular, and the Beijing government just simply wanted to start using its own in manufacturing. And I would say a third reason is that the Beijing government is increasingly concerned about its image overseas, in particular its image as the world's dumping grounds. So, among other things, a documentary called Plastic China, which was widely seen, really influenced the Politburo's decision to clamp down on scrap imports from other parts of the world.
So how will all of these changes with China start to impact our lives here in the U.S.?
Well, they have already, in ways that have rippled through the country over the past year and right down to some of the smallest municipal authorities. The effects were most immediately felt on the West Coast. So here in California, Alaska, and Hawaii, immediately trash and recyclables, paper and plastic started building up in holding facilities. But if you look at reports over the year, you can see almost every state has been deeply affected. The companies that collect recyclables have lost a major income stream. So while bales of plastic could be sold for like $300 a ton, about 2 years ago, they are now worth nothing. And in fact, often recycling facilities have to pay to have them taken off their hands or to actually send them to landfill. This has had a knock-on effect back to local authorities who make recycling policy decisions and to consumers. So in many municipalities, what we've seen, particularly from the point of view of consumers, is a rise in prices and a change in what municipalities will accept, what kinds of plastic, what kinds of recyclables. And that's been pretty fundamental for many communities. Other communities, other policy makers have simply stopped or not implemented recycling policies and practices. Many have stopped picking up certain kinds of recyclables altogether.
Our guest on InfoTrack is Kate O'Neill, an associate professor in the Department of Environmental Science, Policy, and Management at UC Berkeley. And we're discussing the surprising state of recycling in America and what consumers need to know. Dr. O'Neill, I think many American consumers would find this sort of shocking that after all of these years of being trained to make these recycling decisions on a daily basis, that our country has no means to deal with pretty much any of it. Is there any chance that may change?
Yeah, that is changing already. I mean, we've always had the ability to deal with the most recyclable plastics, but the problem is we just simply hadn't bothered to develop any further infrastructure over the past, 15 to 20 years, simply because we had China as an out. So there are a lot of efforts starting to build up recycling capacity here. And those efforts are really starting to come to fruition really around about now. The recycling industry is starting to get a little bit more optimistic. They're saying glass half full rather than glass half empty. So some of the things we're seeing are an increase in capacity and technology and even employment at materials recovery facilities. These are the facilities that take in the recycling, clean it, bale it, sort it, and send it on. So they're making a big effort to increase the quality of their output and their recyclability. A lot of municipal companies and authorities are engaging in consumer education, telling consumers what they can recycle, how clean it needs to be, both educating and also putting on stickers on containers when they're out on the curb, if consumers have gotten the sorting wrong. So there's a lot of different initiatives happening. It's hopeful that more larger recycling facilities can be built over time. That's an interesting question with a lot going on. One is that some Chinese companies.
No matter if the market is up or the market is down, Phil Grandy and his Phil's Gang members prepared for market volatility and making profits.
Cisco in April, we're up 4%. We just got in that in April. Lockheed Martin, we're up now 7%. Facebook, we bought April 9th, we're up 10%. Morgan Stanley, we're up 11%. WLL, we bought April.
This is InfoTrack, the weekly show with information you should know. Here's what's happening on this week's show.
Ever wonder what happens to the stuff you toss in the recycling bin? For decades, America's recyclable waste has been processed in China. But now, the Asian giant refuses to accept most U.S. recyclables.
That sent the recycling industry in the U.S. into freefall. It's no exaggeration to say that this decision by China meant the end of recycling as we know it.
Then, recent research shows that kids who participate in team sports may have greater brain development and lower rates of depression.
If it turns out that sports really is preventative of depression, we certainly might want to think about how we make sure that all kids have equal opportunities to participate.
Those two stories and more are coming your way on this week's show. InfoTrack begins right after this.
Lowe's knows you're the powerhouse who does it right to show your yard who's boss. We do it right too with innovative Craftsman string trimmers featuring easy start technology for simpler pull starts. And because you can swap out one attachment for another, you can get more done with just one tool. Shop now and add a new trimmer to your arsenal with a Craftsman 2-cycle gas string trimmer for just $129. When it's time to take on the yard work, do it right for less. Start with Lowe's. Offer valid through 4/24. See store for details. U.S. only.
Geico presents yet another voicemail from your roommate.
Hi. So, about the kitchen. Turns out when there's a grease fire, you're not supposed to throw water on it. Who would have known, right? Anyways, the fire department is here and it's totally cool. Give me a call back when you get a chance.
The Geico Insurance Agency could help keep your personal property protected, like if danger is your roommate's middle name. Visit geico.com to see how easy it is to switch and save on renter's insurance.
This morning's been great so far, until you spot a ticket on your car. It says no parking from 8 till 5, or on any days that end in a Y. You can only park here every other Lunar New Year. Oddly specific. When your morning is hell, just go to Taco Bell.
And try the $1 grilled breakfast burrito with fluffy eggs and your choice of bacon, sausage, or potato. Only at Taco Bell. At participating stores for limited time during breakfast hours. Prices may vary. Tax extra.
Spilled your red wine? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up spills and messes quicker. And is 2 times more absorbent than the leading Ordinary brand. So you can get back on track quicker. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.